Even if my lips don't kiss, even if I cannot reach it, I keep guessing.
Hello, everyone.
Even if
Wow,
my
I can't
stomach
believe that it is week 7 already, and we are moving through the guidelines at light speed. And we are super sad to see the Recognition Network go. We love the Recognition Network, but we are now moving to multiple means of action and expression, which means we are thinking about the strategic network. So let's talk a little bit about where the strategic network lives in the UDL guidelines. So if you remember representation, we were right there in the middle, and on the right hand side, that's the strategic network, and that is responsible for all kinds of action and expression. And over the next few weeks, we're going to think about the different ways that we can support and scaffold physical action, communication, as well as executive function. We use it all the time for things that are big and for things that are small. If we're preparing a meal, if we're planning a vacation, if we're planning to apply to Hugsy or not. All of those things are things that involve the strategic network. And of course, the strategic network is incredibly important in education, but of course in the workplace too, right? We use it all the time. And of course, in the context of T560, you are using your strategic network when you are thinking about your semester project. You're thinking about what it should be. You're trying to hone in on goals and how you're going to accomplish it. You're trying to think of your interests, your skills. You're trying to work with partners. You are scheduling time together. You are thinking about how you are going to implement it. All of those things are the strategic network at work. So the strategic network governs all kinds of behaviors that we engage in all the time. Some of these behaviors are unconscious. We don't think about them, and they can be quite small, like blinking or scratching an itch or something like that. Then there are other kinds of skills and behaviors that are kind of, you might think of as intermediate things that we do all the time that we don't necessarily actively think about, like engaging in a conversation or driving sometimes or walking across the street. It's also true, right, that it governs very, very complex behaviors as well. So think of very skilled athletes or dancers. Those are very well rehearsed, very difficult physical actions that take a lot of practice to do well. All right, so the other thing to remember about this network, just like the other parts of the brain, is that it is very plastic. It responds to exercise, it responds to use, it responds to injury. It also responds to context and to culture.
Action and expression can often feel secondary or even separate to what we're talking about in terms of representation or even emotion. And it's really quite prevalent in our society to see the relationship between recognition and action as very linear. And this is very simply put as the idea that you have some sort of sensory input and then you think on it and then you act on it. So here, let me show you a slide that has a representation that's a newer model of cognition. And what you'll see is this model is really challenging that linear line and getting us to think more about our thinking and action like a loop. So, for example, you might have a voluntary movement that actually begins with your brain predicting. And this prediction is critical to your movement. So you experience the world, it motivates you to intend to change it, and then that internal intention becomes external. When you move, you then change your surroundings, and then that causes you again to predict. And that prediction leads to intention to change the world again. So, thus, the loop keeps going around and around. So, everyday examples of this loop can be found in technology today, such as the technology powering autonomous driving cars, or even the technology that's in development to create complex prosthetics. And the main point here is that our intentions and our brains communicate with the external world. And so, what does this mean for our motor and strategic networks? This week, there's an optional reading on embodied cognition, which I appreciate, and I know many of you do too, because you've discussed the importance of embodied cognition as another view of how we make sense of the world. So, action in sensory motor processing isn't secondary or even lower level to cognition or thinking, but it's actually really important to our higher level cognition. We can think of sensing and acting as thinking. Cognition, not just about thinking, it's about action and emotion. So think about what this means for our teaching methods, especially when we rely on more abstract ways of teaching that don't involve action or don't consider the emotions of our learners. And it also leads us to think about individual differences in physical action and how these differences help us understand the barriers present in the environment. One of the places I taught when I was a teacher of the visually impaired is Avalon Academy. Avalon is a movement-based program for students in the San Francisco Bay Area, and many of the students that I worked with had cerebral palsy or other physical impairments. And let me pull up some pictures of Avalon for you. Here you go. Avalon was designed from the beginning for these students. On the lower right is a great picture of George. He's in the middle of the main classroom at Avalon, which was a huge white rug that students could stretch out and relax on. And this was in place of a classroom that might have desks and chairs, because on this rug we would have many movement therapies and activities, and we would actually integrate academic content into those therapies. We even had a projector that would allow us to go on the ceiling different lessons, so the students would be able to lie on the rug and look up and not have to fight gravity to take in information and also to act on that information. What was really fantastic about Avalon is that every decision that was made in the school was very respectful for how these children moved their bodies and whether those bodies were tight or loose at that moment. And Avalon, though, interestingly, wasn't just about variation in physical ways that we move and how that connects to our thinking. There was also many students at that school who had visual impairment, which is one of the reasons why I was there. As a teacher of the visually impaired at Avalon, one of the reasons I was there was to provide services for the students who had cerebral or cortical visual impairment. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that and then dig into this study. So cerebral visual impairment, or CVI for short, is the leading cause of vision impairment in Western countries. And one of the things that's interesting about CVI is it's not an impairment of the eye or an optic nerve, but rather how the brain processes vision. And at Avalon, a majority of the students had this diagnosis. So if you look at this study of 38 kids who had CVI, you can see there's a relationship between head control and usable vision. So this research tells us a story about CVI, that it's not just about visually taking information in, but also about environmental barriers to movement and distance to information. And so there's an interesting interaction between vision and physical movement that's important. And this interaction isn't just important for students at Avalon Academy. It's really important for, or even just those with other types of visual impairments, it's really important for all of us to understand, because once we begin to really think about how the environment limits access to both representations and our ability to act on those representations, we're better able to plan learning environments for all. Let's look at one part of action and expression. Let's dig into vary the methods for response and navigation. So, motor demands of a task are very important to consider, and our first instinct might be to look at the barriers and physical demanding tasks that are in schools now, like writing for a child who has dysgraphia. But another way to approach this is to think about what we require of students and their bodies prior to learning and even during learning. Here are some common signs that you might see in schools. I see them when I go on visits all the time. And what I want you to think about is notice what they're communicating to us about how a child's body must be before they even begin to learn, and how they must keep their body over time during learning. I often think of these signs and then also think of students like those at Avalon Academy or George. Just to be able to do some of these actions would take all their energy and put it in the wrong place, their posture, versus putting it in the right place, which might be towards that learning goal. So think about, what do these signs tell us about what we prioritize in our learning environments? And what kinds of priorities do you see in the learning environments that you're interested in having an impact on?
Another thing that we want to encourage you to focus on is this emphasis on optimizing access and use of tools for assistive technology. Assistive technology used to be things that were pretty constrained around mobility, around hearing impairment, around navigation, and now they are there's just this plethora of different kinds of devices made specifically for individuals with disabilities to help them in aspects of daily living, functioning in school, success in the workplace and in the community, allows them to get around, allows them to work, allows them to access computers and the internet. So it's this rich array that's growing all the time. And it has really changed over the years, from the kind of core functional areas to things that are used in schools, which for a long time really was just was text, and now of course it includes all sorts of things that we use in school for learning, like videos and podcasts and all kinds of other kinds of media. And so it's important that these technologies be available for everybody who needs them. All right, another set of lines that are very important are the things that we refer to as executive functions. And we know from looking at your projects that a lot of you are really interested in this topic. They are a very diverse set of skills, but they help us in planning and forecasting and monitor how we're doing, whether it's cooking or doing a larger project. They allow us to change on the fly. They allow us to shift our attention as we need to. They also are used to help us monitor our psychological and emotional states and make adjustments. And they are pertinent for us each and every day. Another one of the interesting things about executive function and a whole bunch of really important skills is that they are not things that are typically taught in schools. These are things that people pick up, learn by modeling, watch, learn on themselves. But it's changing. But historically, it's been the case that these are not things that are easy to find and are taught in schools. All right, so we've got a couple of examples, a couple of video examples of young people employing action and expression in their own lives, and they just show incredible creativity in how these skills get applied.
I am a pretty active guy. I go down here skiing every winter. I am a blogger. I play sports quick center. I really like baseball, and in high school I played all the Olympic sports, soccer, floor hockey, and softball. Hi, I'm Sam Graves, and I go to school at Minneapolis Community and Technical College in downtown Minneapolis because I have cerebral palsy and I use a wheelchair. I use assistive technology to help me out. I use my iPad, my computer, and my voice recorder. Before I use my iPad and my voice recorder to take notes, I had an aide who would take notes for me, but now I can take my own notes. This is my iPad, and let me show you one of my favorite apps I can know. This app is great for recording teacher lectures and typing my own notes. This is also great for recording my homework assignments when I have to write papers. Here is an example.
Here's the gory details. So Python associates names with values in what Python calls a binding environment. An environment is just a list that associates a name and an entity.
I use a lot. I use the Kindle app, which allows me to read my books on my iPad. For example, right now, I am reading my book for my intercultural communication class on my iPad. Or I like the Kindle app more than a printed book because for me, it is easier to read books on the computer instead of in print. They are a lot easier than a regular book to carry around. This is a digital voice recorder, and I use this app to record lectures, and sometimes I use it to record my homework assignments. I like my technology, but I'm always looking for the latest and coolest piece of technology. When I'm looking for new technology, I usually either go online or read about it in the news. Excuse me, but I have to go write a blog post before I go to my next class.
My name is Chloe Short, and I play the baritone in Tom Cox's intermediate band for about 7 months. Now I'm going to play 2 songs for you guys today. First, On the Verge of Avocation, and second, Skip to My Lou. Alright, well, here I go. Here's On the Verge of Avocation. Thanks for watching.
How we are always trying to adapt our environment and the designs around us to support whatever our goals are. So we adjust our cars in particular ways for those of us who have cars. We have differences in our work setups. If we use computers, sometimes we have adjustable desks, multiple keyboard, multiple displays. Some people have multiple keyboards, I guess. This is and when you talk to people, it's remarkable how different all of that is. In fact, in terms of managing the environment. I wish when I was on the plane last week that the person in front of me had not modified their environment to their liking so much by putting the seat back meant that I couldn't actually record this video. Anyway, we all seek to adjust our environments to meet our goals, and we all do it very differently. All right, and we've talked a lot about how our brains respond to context and to history and to maturation, and that they are plastic in the ways that they do so. I wanted to talk a little bit about an extreme example of that, which is the story of Phineas Gage. This is one of the kind of most famous cases in neuroscience. Phineas Gage lived in the mid 1800s. He worked on the railroads, and he had a very unfortunate accident where one of the rods used for constructing the railroads actually went directly through his head, coming in from under his jaw, and then went all the way through. It's a small miracle that he actually survived. People have wondered really ever since about how this was possible. Anyway, he did survive, and but he changed. So it was very interesting. His personality. There are lots of different stories about this. So there's a little bit of mythology here, but some of the stories were that he had been kind of a nice young man who was very courteous, well spoken, and that after the accident he was unruly and cursed like a sailor, and so it's not exactly clear which of the stories is true. But the amazing thing actually is that just shows that given an incredible trauma to the brain, is still able to heal and still able to function. So this is an example of hopefully none of us, or very few of us, go through any kind of brain trauma. This is not common, but it does show exactly what our brains are capable of.
Brain's job is to prepare you to have all those skills under executive functioning and to self-regulate yourself to become more independent. And you might think, we just don't do it as well as some other species. They're, up and running quicker. But remember, going back to David's point, that a longer adolescence period provides more time for these processes to take hold. And that means we are more flexible, and our skills and our talents and our interests can develop way into our 20s. And this gives us a really important advantage. And I'm going to talk about two individuals now that I think who have really lived this through their accomplishments. On the first, we have Tim Berners-Lee, and he stitched together the core software for the internet. He did it because he loved problem solving, and in his 20s, he wanted to create a system to sort out his own thinking and to create a support for the barriers he was facing in his job. And in doing so, he ended up creating what became the World Wide Web. Another example of this flexibility at play and how it can lead to success is Lady Gaga. She was immediately drawn to music when she was younger. She had a really strong family that supported her. She was hardworking, very serious, and that all came to her big break when she was 17 and a student at NYU. But one of the things that we see about her and what makes her such an important artist is that she continued to change herself, especially in the early years of her career. And, that's just another way that this flexibility can be a real advantage. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Great. I'll see you all in class. Bye.